The last witch hunter stood before the burning pyre, watching the flames consume his latest kill. He had hunted witches for years, but this time, something felt different. The fire whispered his name. The wind carried voices he did not recognize. And when he turned away from the smoldering corpse, a shadow moved. His own, but twisted wrong. The hunt was supposed to end here. But what if it was just beginning? The fire burned high, licking at the sky like a living thing, its embers dancing on the night air. The witch hunter stood before it, his face illuminated by the flickering glow. He had done this 100 times before. The cries, the curses, the crackling of flesh. It was all familiar. But this one felt different. The woman bound to the stake was silent. No screaming, no begging, no last-minute pleas for mercy. She only watched him, her dark eyes filled with something he could not name. And as the flames curled around her feet, she whispered words that made his blood run cold. "You think this is the end?" Her voice was barely a breath, yet it cut through the roar of the fire. "You are part of us now." The flames consumed her, turning her body to black and bone. But her voice did not die. It lingered, slipping into the night like smoke. The hunter turned away, shaking off the unease that clung to his spine. A witch's tricks, nothing more. They always sought to curse him, to whisper their poison before they died. He had heard it all before. Yet as he walked away from the burning pyre, something felt wrong. His shadow, stretched long against the ground, did not move as it should. It twisted, coiling unnaturally, its edges shifting like liquid. He blinked, and it was normal again. The road was long and dark, the trees lining it gnarled and skeletal in the dim light. The wind howled through the branches, carrying strange whispers. He gritted his teeth, pushing forward. He was tired, that was all. A hunter's life was not an easy one. The cabin came into view, a small, lonely thing on the edge of the woods. He had spent the last 5 years moving from town to town, never staying long, always chasing the next hunt. This cabin was only a temporary rest stop, a place to sharpen his blade, gather his strength, and plan his next move. Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows against the walls. He sat at the worn wooden table, pulling out his dagger. The blade was clean, untouched by rust, but his hands were not steady as he inspected it. He exhaled sharply. Then the whisper came. "Do you feel it?" His grip tightened around the dagger. He did not move, did not turn his head. It was a trick of the wind. "You carry us now." The whisper slithered beneath his skin, curling inside his bones. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. His reflection in the blade caught his eye, and for a moment he did not recognize himself. His eyes too bright, too golden, a flicker of something inhuman. He slammed the dagger onto the table. Fatigue, that was all. He needed rest. The night stretched on, heavy and suffocating. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it was filled with visions, burning bodies, shadows writhing, creeping toward him. A woman's voice whispering in his ear, too close, too knowing. "You are one of us now." He woke with a start, heart pounding. The fire had burned low, casting the room in deep, wavering darkness. His breath came short, sharp, a sound, a creak of wood. His hand went to his sword. The cabin door remained closed, but something had moved. His shadow, long and stretched against the wall, was not his own. It shifted. He rose slowly, his body tense, every muscle coiled. The shadow detached from the floor, rising, unfurling. It took shape, his shape, a perfect mirror, yet wrong. The edges of it wavered, flickering like the dying flame. And then it spoke. "How does it feel, Hunter?" His fingers clenched around the hilt of his sword, but he did not draw it. The shadow took a step forward. "You burn them. You destroy them. But where do you think the magic goes?" His pulse hammered against his ribs. "We are inside you now," the shadow whispered. "Every witch you've slain, every soul you've burned. You thought you were cleansing the world, but you were only feeding the fire." He could not move, could not breathe. His skin burned, his veins pulsed with something thick and unnatural. The shadow laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Look at your hands, Hunter." He did, and what he saw made his stomach lurch. His fingertips were dark, his nails blackened like burned wood. The veins beneath his skin pulsed with something other than blood, something deep in gold, something alive. Panic flared in his chest. He lunged, his sword cutting through the air, but the blade met nothing. The shadow twisted, dissolving, reforming on the other side of the room. It grinned. "You cannot kill what you have become." His breath was ragged. He stumbled back, hitting the table. His own reflection in the window stared back at him, golden eyes glowing in the darkness. "No," he muttered. "No, this is not real." The shadow cocked its head. "Deny it all you want. But tell me, Hunter, when was the last time you felt truly human?" His mind raced, searching for an answer, but the memories blurred. How many witches had he slain? How many times had he stood before the fire, watching their bodies turn to ash, the faces blended together, the deaths, the hunts, the towns? Had he ever left the hunt? Or had the hunt become him? A sound broke through the silence, the distant toll of a church bell. Dawn. The shadow stepped back, merging into the darkness, its voice trailing after it like smoke. "You will see the truth soon enough." The sun crept over the horizon, its light piercing through the cracks in the walls. His shadow lay still at his feet, normal once more. But he knew something had changed. The village would be waiting. The hunt was never over. He picked up his sword, sliding it back into its sheath. His hand still trembled. He stepped out into the morning light, but the warmth did not reach him. His shadow stretched long against the ground, and for the first time, he felt afraid of it. The Blood Moon Ritual. We thought it was just a legend, until we saw the fire burning at midnight. By then, it was too late to run. It started with an invitation. A single piece of parchment, old and crumpled, slid under my apartment door. The paper smelled of damp earth and something metallic, something like blood. There was no sender, no address, only a single sentence written in jagged, uneven handwriting. "Come to Blackwood Forest on the night of the blood moon. Witness the ritual. Join or be taken." At first, I thought it was a prank, a sick joke. But when I mentioned it to Daniel, his face went pale. He had heard of these invitations before. People received them, and then they disappeared. That should have been enough to make us stay away. But we were thrill seekers, always chasing the next ghost story, the next abandoned place, the next rush of fear. So when the blood moon night arrived, we packed our bags and headed into Blackwood Forest. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. There were no birds, no wind, not even the rustle of leaves. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Then we saw the fire. It was massive, far too large for a simple campfire. The flames twisted unnaturally, stretching toward the sky, pulsing in rhythm with something unseen. Around the fire stood figures, their bodies draped in long, tattered cloaks. Their faces were hidden, but their heads moved in slow, synchronized motions, as if listening to something we couldn't hear. A chill ran down my spine. We should have left. We should have turned around right then. But we didn't. One of the figures lifted their head. A mask covered their face, smooth, featureless, except for a carved symbol in the center of the forehead. Their voice was hollow, distant, like it was coming from somewhere far away. "You have come. Now you must choose." We didn't understand what they meant until they dragged a woman into the clearing. She was bound at the wrists and ankles, her mouth gagged with a dirty cloth. Her eyes, wild, desperate, pleaded with us. "The moon is watching," one of the figures said. "She must be fed." A dagger gleamed in the firelight, long, jagged, stained with something dark. Rachel gasped. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This has to be some kind of sick game." The masked leader tilted their head. "A game!" Their voice barely carried over the crackling flames. "Do you wish to take her place?" Rachel stepped back. No one spoke. No one moved. The dagger came down. The woman's scream never finished. The moment her blood touched the dirt, the fire roared higher. The ground trembled. The air became thick, suffocating. Above us, the blood moon glowed brighter, pulsing like a beating heart. Something shifted inside the flames. A shape, tall, twisted, wrong. It had too many limbs, bending and stretching in ways that should have been impossible. It had no eyes, no face, but I knew it was looking at us. More, the leader whispered. More blood. More flesh. Olivia turned to run. She didn't make it 3 steps before something reached out from the fire. Something black, clawed, inhuman. It wrapped around her ankle, yanking her back with terrifying force. Her scream was cut short as she was pulled into the flames. She was gone. Daniel grabbed my arm. "We have to go. Now!" We turned and ran, but the trees had changed. The path we came from was gone. No matter which direction we ran, we ended up back at the clearing. The fire still burned. The figures still chanted, and they were smiling. Marcus was the first to snap. He bolted into the darkness, ignoring our shouts. A scream, a wet, tearing sound. Then silence. Rachel trembled, staring into the fire, whispering something under her breath. Then, without warning, she stepped forward. "Rachel!" I grabbed for her, but she didn't stop. She walked straight into the flames. The chanting stopped. The fire turned black. The thing inside, it laughed. The figures turned toward us. The leader lifted their hands and removed their mask. It was Marcus. His skin was stretched too tightly, his eyes black, void-like. His lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "Welcome home," he said. The last thing I remember is falling into the fire, into the darkness, and then waking up. I was in my bed, no burns, no pain, just a whisper in my ear. "The moon will rise again, and so will you." A knock at the door. I already knew what was waiting for me. A crumpled, weathered invitation. "Come to Blackwood Forest on the night of the blood moon. Witness the ritual. Join or be taken." They thought it was just an old village legend, the tale of the fire circle, a cursed place deep in the forest where no one returned. But when a group of travelers takes a shortcut through the woods, they find themselves trapped inside a burning ring of fire. A fire that doesn't burn the trees or the ground, only the flesh of those who dare to cross it. As the flames rise higher, something ancient and hungry stirs within the inferno, whispering their names, one by one. Full horror story, trapped in the fire circle. Chapter 1, The Shortcut. It started with a bad decision. Maya, Arjun, Danny, and Zishan were returning from a road trip when they decided to take a shortcut through the remote forests of Punjab. The GPS lost signal, but the road was clear, so they pressed on. As the sun set behind the thick trees, the road suddenly disappeared into dense undergrowth. "There's no way back," Arjun muttered. Then they saw it, a massive circle of blackened stones surrounding a clearing. In the center, the grass was dead, scorched in a perfect ring. It looked ancient, unnatural. Chapter 2, The First Sign. Zishan, always the daring one, stepped forward. The moment his foot touched the burnt grass, the air changed. A crackling sound erupted around them, and flames shot up, forming a towering wall of fire. It stretched high into the sky, enclosing them in a ring of burning doom. Maya screamed. Arjun grabbed his phone, but there was no signal. Dani rushed to the flames, but the heat was unbearable. It wasn't ordinary fire. It didn't spread to the trees, didn't consume anything, just trapped them inside. Then came the whispers. A voice, hoarse and dry like burnt wood, spoke their names. Maya, Arjun, Danny, Zishan. Zishan turned pale. "Did you hear that?" Danny clutched her stomach. "It's coming from inside the fire." Chapter 3, The Markings. As they looked around in horror, Maya noticed something carved into the blackened stones. Old symbols, strange and unfamiliar. But one thing was clear. A pattern of 5 figures, 4 standing, 1 lying down. Lifeless. Arjun's voice trembled. "It means one of us won't make it out." Then the temperature dropped. The fire roared, but a cold presence slithered through the air. Shadows formed within the flames, twisting, shifting, taking shape. A face emerged, hollow eyes, a skeletal grin. The spirit of the fire circle had awakened. Chapter 4: The First Sacrifice. Zishan panicked and grabbed a rock, hurling it at the figure in the fire. It passed through, but the entity laughed, a deep guttural sound that made their skin crawl. "You have entered the circle," it rasped, "and the circle demands blood." Suddenly, Zishan screamed. His hands blistered, his skin bubbling like melting wax. He staggered forward, his body pulled toward the fire. "Help me!" he shrieked. Maya and Arjun tried to hold him back, but Danny was frozen in shock. The entity in the flames raised a bony hand, and Zishan's body lifted off the ground. His face contorted in agony as he was dragged, inch by inch, toward the inferno. And then, he was gone, consumed. His screams faded into the crackling fire. Chapter 5: The Haunting Truth. The fire didn't die down. If anything, it grew stronger. The markings on the stones changed. Now only 3 figures remained standing. "We have to find a way out," Danny sobbed. Maya knelt by the stones, tracing the symbols. "This is a binding spell. Someone trapped this thing here by feeding it souls. If we break the circle, we break the curse." "But how?" Arjun asked desperately. The whispers returned. This time, they came from inside their heads. "Only blood can break the circle." Maya's heart pounded. "We have to offer something, or someone." Chapter 6: The Betrayal. Arjun's face darkened. "One life to break the curse?" His eyes flickered to Danny. Danny backed away. "No! There has to be another way!" But Arjun had already grabbed a sharp rock. Before Maya could stop him, he lunged at Danny. She fought back, screaming, clawing at his face, but he was stronger. With a final desperate thrust, he drove the stone into her chest. The fire reacted instantly. A shock wave burst through the air, the flames swirling wildly. The entity roared in fury. The fire was fading. Chapter 7: Escape or Not. The moment the flames died down, Arjun and Maya stumbled out of the circle. The air felt lighter, the darkness of the forest seeming normal again. "It worked," Arjun gasped. But as they turned to leave, a whisper slithered into their ears. "The circle is never broken." A cold hand gripped Maya's ankle. She looked down. Danny's lifeless eyes stared back. And then, the fire returned.
The desert was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that pressed in on you, like the air itself had weight. Mark had been in the wilderness many times before, but this was different. The land felt oppressive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered, gnawing at him from the inside. They had set up camp near Black Canyon, an infamous place known for its jagged cliffs and deep ravines. The locals spoke about it in hushed tones, warning anyone who would listen to stay far away after dark. But Mark wasn't the superstitious type. He was here for the adventure, nothing more, nothing less. Jason and Olivia were eager for the hike, their excitement infectious. Jason had been Mark's best friend for years, always looking for the next thrill. Olivia, his sister, had joined them reluctantly. She was the practical one, always skeptical, always questioning. Still, the 3 of them made a good team. They had hiked through the most remote corners of the country and laughed in the face of danger. But something about Black Canyon didn't feel right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature dropped rapidly, and the canyon's shadows grew long and twisted, stretching across the earth like fingers reaching out. Mark noticed the stillness. It was more than the absence of sound. It was a heavy kind of quiet, the kind that seemed unnatural. He could feel the weight of the air pressing down on him. "Let's get the fire going," Jason said, breaking the silence as he knelt by the pile of wood they had gathered earlier. He struck a match and set the pile alight, the flames licking the dry wood and crackling loudly in the night. Olivia unpacked their gear while Mark stood by, watching the flickering light. The firelight cast an eerie glow over the surrounding cliffs, illuminating the jagged edges of the canyon walls that seemed to loom over them. There was no moon, only the stars, distant and cold. "You guys hear that?" Mark asked, his voice low. "Hear what?" Olivia asked, glancing up from the camp stove. Mark frowned, straining his ears. "It's too quiet. I don't hear any animals or insects." Jason chuckled, tossing another log into the fire. "You're just spooked. It's fine. It's the desert. It's quiet." But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The air felt thick, like something was watching them. As they ate their dinner, Mark's eyes kept darting to the edge of the camp, where the darkness pressed in like a wall. The firelight was flickering more erratically now, casting long, distorted shadows. The wind had picked up, but it wasn't the usual desert breeze. It felt unnatural, colder than it should have been. Olivia didn't seem to notice. She was too busy telling Jason about some new documentary she had watched, her voice a little too loud in the oppressive silence. Mark tried to focus on her words, but his gaze kept drifting back to the dark. Then he heard it, a faint noise, like a twig snapping. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head toward the sound, but all he could see was darkness. "Did you hear that?" Mark asked. Jason and Olivia paused, looking at him. "Hear what?" Olivia asked. "That," Mark began, but the words died in his throat. Another noise, this time louder, a rustling, as though something large was moving just outside the firelight. "Probably an animal," Jason said dismissively. But Mark wasn't convinced. The sound was too deliberate, too careful. "All right," Jason said, standing up. "I'm going to check it out. Stay here." Before Mark could protest, Jason grabbed a flashlight and disappeared into the dark. Olivia muttered something under her breath, clearly annoyed at Jason's brashness. "I'm going to bed," Olivia said, standing up to go to her tent. Mark stayed by the fire, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread in his gut. The wind had stopped now, and the silence was deafening. The fire flickered weakly, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. And then the voice. "Mark, come outside." It was Jason's voice, but distorted. It sounded wrong. The cadence was all off, like a bad imitation of Jason's voice. Mark froze. He gripped the flashlight, his hands shaking. "Jason?" he called out, his voice trembling. No answer. He called again, louder this time. "Jason?" The silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Mark stood there, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Something was wrong, and then he heard it again, but closer this time. "Mark, come outside." It was no longer Jason's voice. It was a twisted mockery of it, too low, too guttural, and the tone, like it was calling him, luring him. His heart pounded in his chest as his mind raced. What should he do? Jason was out there, but that voice, it wasn't right. It wasn't him. He turned to Olivia's tent. "Olivia, stay inside," he shouted, his voice shaking. The air around him seemed to tighten. He could feel something moving in the shadows, something watching him. Then something moved, quick, almost too fast to track. Mark whipped around, flashlight in hand, and for a split second he thought he saw something. A shape, too thin, too tall to be human, just beyond the firelight. Before he could react, there was a sudden rustling, followed by a scream, Jason's scream. It was cut short, a sharp, agonizing sound that made Mark's blood run cold. "No," Mark shouted, running toward the sound. But the canyon walls seemed to stretch further, as if the distance had grown too long. He sprinted, panic setting in as the sound of Jason's voice, no, the thing's voice, echoed through the canyon. "Mark, help me." The words were wrong. They were like a mocking version of Jason's voice, twisted and drawn out. Mark stumbled, falling to his knees as he reached the spot where the sound had come from. He scanned the area with the flashlight. Nothing. No sign of Jason. Just the sound of his own heavy breathing. And then the sound again. Thud. Something heavy hitting the ground. A wet, squelching sound. Mark turned, heart racing. There, at the edge of the firelight, was Jason. Or what had once been Jason. It was hunched over, its back arched in an unnatural way. Limbs too long, too thin. Its head was twisted as if it had been broken and reassembled. The face, it had Jason's face, but it was wrong. The eyes were wide, unblinking, black as night. The mouth was stretched into a grotesque smile. The creature didn't move. It just stared at Mark with those empty eyes, and Mark could feel the weight of its gaze pressing into him, suffocating him. And then it spoke. "Help me." Mark couldn't move. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body was frozen. It wasn't Jason. It wasn't anything human. It was something else, something that shouldn't exist. With a sudden, jerking motion, the creature lunged. Mark barely had time to react. He scrambled backward, his heart pounding, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The thing reached for him, its fingers too long, its nails too sharp. But before it could grab him, Olivia screamed. Mark turned, the flashlight flickering wildly, and saw her, her figure silhouetted in the distance, standing just outside her tent. "Olivia, run!" Mark shouted, his voice hoarse. But the creature didn't turn toward her. It only fixed its unblinking gaze on Mark, and then, in a moment of clarity, Mark realized this thing, this skinwalker, was not after her. It was after him. With all his strength, Mark pushed himself to his feet and ran, his legs burning with the effort that the sound of his breath filling his ears. The creature's footsteps were right behind him, too fast, too close. He didn't know how long he ran. His mind was a blur of fear and adrenaline. Finally, he saw the lights of their truck in the distance. Mark's hands were shaking as he fumbled for the keys, his breath ragged. He glanced back. The creature had stopped. It was standing in the shadows, watching him, waiting. Mark jumped into the truck, slamming the door shut. Olivia was already inside, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Drive," Mark said, his voice frantic. Olivia didn't question him. She started the engine, and they sped off into the night, the truck's headlights slicing through the darkness. Mark didn't look back, he couldn't. But the image of the creature, the skinwalker, was burned into his mind, a twisted reminder of what he had just escaped. They never spoke of it again. And Jason was never found.